So the past few months have been difficult for a number of industries, and some would say the creative sector has probably been hit the hardest. And its initiatives like this really show the true collaborative nature of the creative industries. So what I'd like to do is introduce our first panel of experts, Lou Caldwell, OBE co-chair of Greater Manchester LEP, Paul Corcoran, Deputy Chair, Liverpool City Region and Digital and Creative Board, and Jenny Rutter, Chair of Creative Lancashire, Director of Super Slow Way, and Founding Director of British Textiles Benigno. Now, each representative will explain the barriers each region has encountered in supporting creatives and their plans for help to get the sector to flourish. And then they will share their thoughts on what the region could do to build back better. So over to you, Lou.
Morning, everyone. I'll give double warnings and apologies. One, poor connectivity, two, noisy children. So either of those could interfere at any point, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So I think as you heard, I co-chair the Greater Manchester LEP, but my day job is I'm a founder of a creative business. So I've worked in the creative industries all my life, and I bear the scars to prove it. So really, what that is representative of is, Greater Manchester's had a long-term commitment to the significance of the creative and digital sector both as a vertical in terms of a sector that creates jobs and opportunities and is actually seen as incredibly economically significant by the region, but also as a horizontal in the sense that we recognise that a lot of those skills that we have in digital and design and creative thinking are needed increasingly by every sector, whether you're working in health, whether you're working in property, whether you're working in the public sector. So I think we recognise the value in both of those. I guess what we've seen, and certainly what my kind of first-hand experience is, there are definitely some anomalies to the creative industries and to trying to grow that sector that we've become quite familiar with as a place over the past kind of couple of decades. And those will be familiar to a lot of people who are joining us today. But what you find is creative businesses are often run by creative people, not by necessarily accountants or economists or people who were trained to run businesses. So that's interesting in terms of the kind of support that businesses need to grow and to scale and to get funded. And there are often also particular issues around kind of entry and inclusion. So often it's an industry that's not understood by people unless they happen to know somebody who works in that industry, or unless they happen to have had exposure in their kind of school or college environment. So it's harder to get people to pull through. Most people understand what being a doctor is, and most people's parents would be very proud of them if they decided to be a doctor. It's harder in the creative industries because often you come across people within their own family not understanding that it really is a viable, positive career, and so you've got different barriers to overcome. And then, once you're in the creative industries or you're running your own kind of creative business, there are massive issues around, often most people are working project to project. It's harder to have visibility of income. Very few people have got a 2 or 3 year business plan that will play out exactly as they thought it would. And I guess we can see that now at this point in time, where it's often the industry that's hit because there's very few smaller indie creative businesses or individuals are sat with enough money in the bank to be able to ride out 6 or 12 months of poor trading. So there's a resilience issue. And also often those industries are the ones that are hit by the first things that get cut, like marketing spend or advertising spend or design or innovation. So I think that they're often particularly exposed. And so therefore you need to kind of recognise their economic significance and wrap a different layer of support around it. So in terms of Greater Manchester strategy, we wrote the local industrial strategy, which was our response in collaboration with government to the national industrial strategy kind of 12 months or so ago. Within that, we recognise 4 key sectors, one of which is creative and digital. And again, we recognise that in there as something that is going to be critical to the future of our economy for the next 20 years and therefore the UK economy. But also we recognise its overlap with the other sectors, which include healthcare and innovation in manufacturing and materials. And so those things we understand are not mutually exclusive. So I think as we look forward to, the insanity that is becoming economic recovery planning, those sectoral focuses for us don't disappear. In fact, they just become more important, because it turns out that the requirement for health innovation, the requirement for digital and creative thinking has now been accelerated. It's not been diminished. So those core components will still be the basis of our planning. But I guess overlaid with that, we've kind of made a commitment, and the LEP's kind of led on the commitment to say, actually, our economic vision is one that focuses on building back better. And for us, that means really that we've probably got one shot to kind of redesign this, so we've got a lot of stuff that's collapsing around us, a lot of stuff that will never be the way it was before. And there's some incredibly painful bits of that we are going to, we're riding through now, and there's more to come. At the same time, we do think there's opportunity, and the opportunity is to design things in a way that addresses some of the things that are actually were quite systemically wrong a long time before COVID, and have failed us in lots of ways. And so that kind of inclusivity, the lack of fairness and equality in the way that people get paid, in the way society runs, and part of that is fulfilling work and fulfilling careers. And again, that's another part where the creative industries comes in, but also a huge part of that will be innovation. So having people who understand how to rewire and redesign and think creatively and think with innovation will become increasingly important. So we're committed both to the sector and to the kind of significance of the creative industries, but also that in the context of Build Back Better, which for us will become our kind of North Star really over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of the asks of government, our asks of business, and actually the role that business then plays in society, which for us is about moving away from this idea that the purpose of business is to create value for 2 or 3 shareholders at the top of a business, but actually the purpose of business is to play a really active role in society, to create a positive place for people to live and work, and to grow their family and their career. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lou. Very insightful and very in depth. It looks exciting for Greater Manchester. So, Paul, what's happened on the Liverpool horizon?
Yeah, so like Lou, I wear 2 hats. So I run a creative agency and a training organisation that's supporting young people into the creative and digital industries, as well as co-chairing the Creative and Digital Board and being the deputy chair of the LEP. So I bring a defiant, creative voice to the table where previously there probably wasn't one, and that was probably our biggest barrier, certainly in Liverpool City region, is having a voice around the table. And I think that voice, probably going back 3 or 4 years, creative and digital was seen as a nice to have, not an absolutely compulsory sector, not a growth sector. And almost, if I heard the word fluffy once, I'd heard it 100 times. And it pained me, to hear that, because I used to think, goodness, there's nothing fluffy about what we're doing in this sector. We're really, doing some incredible things. And I think as a result of that, that positioning of our sector as incredibly important, everything else then flowed from there. So we didn't have the right personnel in place to support businesses. We didn't have the correct business support systems. We didn't have the right skills interventions. There weren't the partnerships between public and private sector organisations. However, that has most definitely changed, and I think that's changed because of listening to the business community, listening to the creative and digital sector, and we have a sector board which is made up of 20 diverse voices, ages, ethnicities, gender, backgrounds, locations, sectors, And it's fantastic because those voices help shape the interventions that we lobby for from both the LEP and also the combined authority going forward. And I think making sure having those voices give us real power when we're making the arguments for we need better placemaking for the city region as a great place to start up and scale up a creative business. It gives us, you know, more evidence to suggest we need, you know, more skills interventions, and we need more places where people can relocate their businesses to. And we're starting, certainly in the last couple of years, to start those interventions and those voices that we're now starting to see the positive effects of that insight and intelligence that's been shared. So new leadership programs, investment in film studios, you know, investment in production companies within the city region, you know, new skills initiatives, innovation funding. And that, I think, and like Lou says, you know, the local industrial plan for us, strategy for us, very much weights creative and digital as an anchor, and as does our economic recovery plan post-COVID. You know, we now see creative and digital as an absolute must-have, not as a nice-to-have. And I think that's going to be for us how we start to build back better. I also, you know, absolutely think that social impact, creative and digital businesses create such social impact. You know, they do such amazing things. And I think it's about building social impact into our procurement moving forward, actively promoting collaboration and partnership moving forward, and making sure that we're amplifying and promoting the brilliant things that are happening on the ground as part of the city region's messaging. Will be other ways in which I think we will build back better. So we've done incredibly well over the last 4 years, but we still have a long way to go.
Thank you, Paul. I think one thing that resonated with me from what you've just said was, and I think it would go for all three regions, is the startup, scale up opportunities in the north. There's never been a better time to be part of that journey. So Jenny, over to you and Lancashire.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting to listen to you both. I can. It's very inspiring to see. I think we're probably, I would feel still a little bit further back in that journey, in that, you know, as Paul was saying, we're probably at that point where we're just tipping past that point of creative and digital being the kind of nice to have rather than the kind of must have. And I think we're sort of elbowing our way around the table at the moment, as opposed to kind of having that seat there, which I think kind of reflects in that some of our previous policy probably wasn't at the level that it's been in kind of Greater Manchester or the Liverpool City region to date. But we're kind of getting there now, I think, and we're moving in that direction, which is really massively positive. I think one of the things just to highlight for us in Lancashire, it is very different being Lancashire a county rather than a kind of metropolitan city. That's a really different context and needs to be reflected. And I think so there's some pretty stark figures when you look at kind of levels of investment in what creates your kind of creative ecology, if you like, that your creative sector grows from. And things like, you know, quite recent Arts Council investment figures that show that per population head, in Manchester, investment's £38 a head. In Liverpool, it's £35 a head. In Lancashire, it's £7 a head. So those are quite stark figures. And when you look at that across 1.5 million people, you can see what an impact that has in terms of the kind of creative and cultural institutions that are here don't have the level of resource to be able to kind of support and grow that ecology in the way that it can do in perhaps more metropolitan environments. And you know, that's not to disparage the absolute amazing creative and talent that's here. This is really fertile ground, and we're growing amazing creative businesses, and you know, and there's a lot of really great stuff happening in terms of how we do that development of that talent coming out of our university bases, for example. But a lot of that then goes into Manchester and Liverpool as a kind of flow, which is at the detriment of some of the organisations that are based here, I think. So we're perhaps a few steps back in our journey, but we are, you know, and I think also just to say that I think we do suffer a little bit in Lancashire from some sort of outdated stereotypes of what our kind of industrial kind of makeup is here, you know, and I think that we're working hard to try and flip that and redefine who we are here in Lancashire, and we've been doing that through similar kind of processes. We've got recently the LEP commissioned a cultural investment strategy. That's been a hugely positive step, which again has informed our local industrial strategy. So that's been a really useful kind of development, and trying to embed some of the key projects that we think are going to make a big difference to that cultural ecology and how we grow our creative sector here. So things like the National Festival of Making, which is building really great profile here. We've got the Eden North project coming to Morecambe, which is huge, and we can really build from that. We've got things like our own project, the British Textile Biennial, which is really starting to kind of redefine what culture is grown here and what it means here. So it's helping shape that sense of place, and it's really rooted here. It's not about shipping stuff in, it's about growing it here, which is really, really important. I think, you know, Lancashire is a place, we're a lot of small local authorities, and I think the devolution conversation that's starting to happen here is really important as well, in terms of how we build ourselves into a structure that allows us to potentially have a mayor in the way that you guys have got mayors, and have that investment from government, that we have more autonomy over how we spend that in order to develop our creative sector. So there's a lot of really positive things, I think, that are coming up for us here that will help us to kind of build back better. And I think, you know, what's really nice about being in Lancashire is that we have seen your journeys. We've seen, you know, and at times we've looked on with a bit of kind of envy at what's happening in Manchester and Liverpool. But actually, we've seen some of the things that perhaps we can do differently here, and we can think differently here. And, you know, we've got big plans to pitch for the City of Culture 2025. And that is really allowing us to kind of reimagine the county as a city of the future, and what that might look like, and how do we build a creative sector that is fit for that kind of city of the future, which almost we don't know what that is yet, but coronavirus has actually helped us to start to imagine how that might operate and how our place can operate. So, you know, and we can build that in with that kind of social justice and social change at the heart of that regeneration kind of approach, instead of kind of tagging it on at the end or rethinking it after you've done it, because actually the kind of gentrification stuff hasn't really helped the people who lived in that place to start off with. So we can bake that in from the start, and I think that's really quite exciting for us in Lancashire. Yeah, so I think that's probably where I'll leave it, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely fine. Thank you very much, Jenny. I think that there is clear progression in Lancashire. So I've seen the Redefining Lancashire campaign. I've seen a lot of the individual authorities wanting to have one mayor, one voice to help attract investment into the region. So I think it's a great step to move forward. And the City of Culture is another opportunity to keep growing where you need to grow. So I just want to encourage the audience to pose any questions in the chat box on the stage, and then we'll look at asking the panel. Now, we do have a question for Paul. So there are some great examples of local creative industry initiatives in the Northwest. For example, the Liverpool Film Office's Merseyside Region Production and Development Fund for local producers. Can Paul tell us a bit more about the inception of the initiative? And can this model be recreated in other regions, or possible with more focused subsector creative industries?
Thanks for the really easy question, Sam. Appreciate it. I think like all of the interventions, they have to come from a need from the market, and I think we are certainly as a city the most filmed city outside of London. I mean, pretty much every week there's a new film or TV drama being filmed here, and it's wonderful. But we lose so much of that business because people turn up, film, and then take all of the production and everything else down to London and elsewhere. And we need to keep some of that. You know, we've got Capital & Centric and the City Council bringing back to life Littlewoods, and which will be Littlewood Studios in partnership with Twickenham. And I think that's going to be super exciting. But actually, it's only going to be exciting if we have the production companies and the filmmakers here who can absolutely grab hold of those studios with both arms and take that opportunity and run with it. And so I think the interventions of the grants of up to £25,000 are really to stimulate and to invigorate and support the wider ecosystem here in Liverpool City region. And I think also as well, you know, that what those interventions do is they give young people or those people who are thinking of moving into the TV film arena a really strong nod that the city region is committed to film, TV being a major growth part of, and an opportunity for them to go into. So I think for us, it's about stimulating the supply chain, growing the ecosystem, and really driving and building confidence for those who are thinking to go into that arena.
Thank you, Paul. So another one's come in. It's a bit of a different one. So, what are your thoughts on regional seed funds for creative industries? I think Jenny. Let's go for Jenny on this one.
Well, I mean, any funding welcome. Good to have things that are targeted. I think we've seen in the past kind of investment into activity in places. I think I don't want to be that person with the Lancashire chip on my shoulder, but we see a lot of investment that kind of goes into places like, for example, Media City being grown always was said to have had that kind of ripple out effect, and I don't think we've really seen that happening in a kind of regional way. So I think seed funding is really important, but I think it needs to kind of be reflective of the needs in each of those kind of sub-regional areas and not kind of focused in one particular way or accessed. It needs to take account of kind of where people are at in that journey, I think, and be accessible by companies and organisations to get to the next step that they need to get to, not necessarily the step that you imagine they should get to, which is often beyond where some places already are. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, it does. And I think it's key that the opportunities that are presented to each of the regions in regards to the seed opportunities is specific for those regions and those creatives within those areas. To close this off, because I'm conscious of the time, if you can sum it up in one sentence, with everything that's happened, what does success look like for your LEP in 2021? And we'll start with Lou, please.
Economic recovery, but in a very different shape than we kind of left off. So we use a phrase that's kind of not back to normal, but forward to better. And so I think for me, it's not just about those absolute numbers in terms of starting to see some growth in the right places. It's about recognising that the trickle-down effect that we perhaps once believed in doesn't work. And actually, you've got to hardwire and engineer a system that gives opportunity for everyone, not just a particular section of society.
I think mine would be that. Thanks, Lou. No, but I think mine is very much about social impact at the core of everything that we do. That it's really important that we spend every single pound wisely and make sure that we bring everyone along with us. I think the creative industries should be able to welcome everybody in, because it's such a wide sector. We've got so much going on within it, and there's a place for everyone. So for me, it's about social impact and a place for everyone around the table.
Yeah, I totally echo that, Paul, completely. Absolutely. And Lou as well. I suppose here it's about getting it embedded in the way that it is in other places. So having that absolutely creative industries, creative and digital industries, the cultural sector baked in as a core part of how we build back better for Lancashire in the future, and having everybody recognise that around that table would be really, really great.
Excellent.
Can I just
say
one last thing? I just want to say thank you to you and your team actually at the Growth Company for pulling this together, because I think as a Northwest, we are so much stronger together, and actually ways moving forward we need to do more of this. So thank you to you and your team for pulling it together and inviting us to be part of it.
You're more welcome. You've just stolen my closing closing speech. But no, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy diaries and coming to talk to us today